Hi everyone, it's Verity here from Pretty Little Broaden. Today I'm taking part in the Happy Holidays Small Creators Video Hop, where a small group of crafters have gotten together to hop along around a holiday theme, card or project to widen our audience's views to other crafters. So I've created 3 cards in the holiday series, one for a beginner, one for an intermediate and one for an advanced crafter. The stamp set I'm using today is the Holiday Boughs from W+9. This is an older set released in 2015, but I recently got it in the sale and wanted to use it on this card today. So I love the big font of the sentiment. I love all the pine leaves that I think will make a great frame for the card. So I'm just placing this on my stamping platform just to make it a little bit easier so I can restamp the prints several times just to get a really good impression. I'm using some inks from New. This is their Green Meadows selection, and I'm just alternating the colours of the pine leaves just to give a bit more interest and added variation. So this stamp set I've only just used fresh out, so the stamps weren't seasoned, so that's why having it in a stamp platform means I can just print it again just to get a better impression. And I just rotated that around in my stamping platform so that I could stamp the same pattern on the opposite corner. Once I was happy with that, I then positioned Happy Holidays stamp in the middle again, just so I could get the pine leaves centered around the sentiment reasonably well and frame that up. And I just again repeated the same thing, putting the stamps down and inking them up. Then I decided to stamp the Happy Holidays in a lovely red from the Cosmos ink stamp set from New, which is a beautiful red. And then in this stamp set you also get some pine cones and some berries. For the pine cones I stamped this in a brown pigment ink. I didn't really have any brown dye inks, but the pigment ink worked really well. And I just used my acrylic blocks to stamp these as it's quite quick and easy. To finish the card off, I mounted it on a red card. I thought that tied in with the Happy Holidays and the cherries really made that pop against the white background. But my card panel was slightly smaller than card, so I just trimmed this down to fit and give about 1/4 of an inch border around the whole card panel. Even though this is a 1-layer card, I still can help adding a little bit of dimension and foam mounting this onto the card panel. Used some glue on the back of the foam to mount it onto the card, as this just gives you a bit of wiggle room to make sure it's straight and aligned. So I really love how this turned out, really quick and easy to do. You can easily batch make that, and it's great for a beginner. So this second card is more for an intermediate, just stepping it up a little bit, using a very similar process, but I just treated my panel with a bit of embossing powder, anti-static tool, just to remove any grease or static that was on the card panel. And I stamped these in Versamark ink, and now I'm covering them in metallic copper powder from Wow, which is a really lovely colour. And I'm just covering the pine cones, pine needles in alternatively. And the other colour I'm using in between is Champers, which to begin with you don't think of it looks that much, but later on when we add more to this card, that really pops, and I think the colour really works well for the pine needles. So I'm just repeating the same thing, using my embossing buddy to remove any static, and then I'm just again stamping with Versamark ink and embossing with the Champers and the metallic copper embossing powders from Wow. Once that was done, I decided that I wanted to heat emboss the Happy Holiday sentiment. So again, I stamped this in Versamark ink, again just using my platform just to make it a bit easier. This I covered in Gold Rich Pale metallic powder from Wow. This, when it's heat set, is a really lovely gold. It's the pale compared to the Gold Rich, it's just takes it a little bit paler, a little bit not quite as brash in a gold. So I really like this gold, and it sits beautifully. So to step this card up a bit more, I'm now ink blending with a blending tool some Distress Oxide onto the panel, on the edge of the panel. I'm using Lucky Clover Distress Oxide. As I'm using Nina Solar White card, this blends beautifully and smooths on with a great blend. And the Distress Oxides are so easy to use as well. So I'm gradually applying this onto the outer edge, lightly, and I'm just fading it out towards the centre of the panel just to give a more faded appearance. And just to add a bit more definition, I went around the edge with a blending tool and black soot. I didn't actually ink up the blending foam in the end because there was quite a bit of excess on there, and that was just enough to add a little bit of dark definition around the edge without it looking too much. So I then used the pine cones again. I stamped these in Versamark ink and heat set these with the same rich gold pale metallic powder from Wow. It just really ties in with the sentiment quite lovely and really is set off against the metallic copper and the champers powder. For the berries, I used Copacabana embossing powder, which is like a pale pink, and this was just mounted onto a craft card base. Again, I just foam mounted that, again using glue just to help adhere it down and make sure it's straight without it sticking down immediately. I think the craft really sets off all the metallic embossing powder that's in this card. So for the last card, it's more of an advanced technique where I'm using alcohol inks to create the background, and I keep my alcohol inks on little U-post tags on a ring just to see what the colours look like so I can choose my colours. So I'm using 3 colours: botanical, clover and mushroom. I didn't use mushroom too much, but it just gave it a bit of more of an earthy green at times. So I'm just laying the botanical around the edge of the card because I want it darker on the edges and lighter in the middle. And then I'm using a straw just to blow this ink around on this Yupo paper. So the Yupo paper is synthetic. And for the technique I'm using a bit later, it needs to be Yupo alcohol paper, not alcohol paper, because the technique later won't work on porous substrates. It needs to be a non-porous substrate. So I've just added some of the clover in. I was blowing that around, and just to get it to blend more, I used some blending solution. So as you can see, now I've started to build up the layers. I've got a bit more of a paler middle and a darker on the outsides, and you can just carry on playing around with the alcohol inks until you're really happy with it. So I'm laying down the pine needle stamps again, but instead of using Versamark ink, I'm using alcohol lift ink. So I'm inking up the stamps on my platform, and I am then just pressing this down to really stamp the pine needles onto the alcohol U-Pull paper background. So once this is done, you then need to take a clean, dry piece of paper towel and just dab where you've stamped your images, and just keep dabbing until no more sort of ink really comes up. When that happens, you can then start rubbing at where you've stamped the image, and this will really start to bring out the alcohol lift ink. Now for a really good clear alcohol lift ink, you might want to stamp it a couple of times. I did see somebody, I can't remember who it was, said that their ink pad looked a bit dry and used a re-inker, and this really helped bring out the alcohol ink a bit more. So you might want to stamp it a couple of times to get a really good impression. So once I'd done all the 4 corners, I then decided to heat emboss the pine cone, little pine cones around. I did this in copper embossing powder. Now you need to be careful because this is a synthetic paper, plastic paper, and obviously heat setting it will warp and bubble. So you want to really do this heat setting it really gently, just a little bit to the paper, and keep taking it off so you're not overheating the Yupo paper. So to reduce the warping on the page even more, I really added a lot of double-sided paper all over the back of the foam, so it would really secure down nice and straight and quite flat. So this one I mounted onto a green card base. Again, that really brought out the lovely greens of the alcohol ink. And I heat embossed the sentiment onto a scrap of card and just fussy cut around it just to foam mount it onto the card. Lastly, I did this off screen. I just added a few red Nouveau drops to mimic berries, and that just really sets the card off. So as you can see, you can create 3 cards of different levels of ability, and they all look stunning no matter what. Don't forget that this video is part of a video hop, so make sure you check out the link below in my description to hop over to the next video and find more crafty inspiration. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd really love it if you could subscribe to my channel. Just hit the button below, and also why not hit the notification bell so you'll know when I've next got a video up. In addition, why not check out this video below where I create custom backgrounds using small stamps and embossing for really fun and unique backgrounds. Until next time, happy crafting!